As I'm recording this episode, it is November 3rd, 2024. Turns out that it was the most beautiful day in the world because daylight savings time has come and we get to fall back in time, meaning we all get an extra hour of sleep. What a wonderful observation I made to take advantage of that extra hour. Hopefully you all did too. My name is Phil and you're listening to The Lib. Like I said, I observed that we had an extra hours of sleep last night, and I took full advantage of it. Now, as this episode airs, it's going to be November 9th, 2024, and I'm going to talk about a lot of different observations that I've seen in recent weeks, and one that I sort of came up with an epiphany that I love to use from time to time. And during that, I may have already used it, but for this episode, I think it's cool to actually go back to rehash this one because it's one of my favorite epiphanies that I've ever had because it's subtle and overlooked by many, many wise people. And occasionally, I got an opportunity to tell people about it, and it's fun. It's one of my favorite observations. But of course, I also get to observe people in their natural habitats. Truthfully, when you walk around the streets of just anywhere in the world, you will notice that there are people who clearly didn't get the memo, absolutely do not understand the assignment, and would probably benefit from a little nudge in the right direction. That's what these observations are about. It's just me seeing what's going on and being able to comment based on what I see. Almost like a commentator for wrestling or football. There's usually two types. There's a play by play and a color man. Now, the play by play guy and the color man have totally different jobs. The play by play guy has a specific and obvious set of things that he's going to do, which is he sees what's going on and he simply comments on what is going on. Simple example: the running back took the handoff and is just rushed for 7 yards. Second down and 3 coming up. There's your play by play. Now, the color man, his take on that would be totally different. Color man would be more descriptive and give you sort of insight as to what's going on. Color man, hey, when I was playing, I took a nice handoff from my quarterback and I had to go for 4 yards in my head. But once I felt that first initial hit, I was able to push forward and I was able to get another couple yards out of it before the next play. So we were able to be just a little bit farther ahead of schedule when the time came. Color man, a little more descriptive, a little more insightful, giving some of his own take. And kind of with the observations, I'm going to get to play both play by play and color, tell you kind of what happened and sort of, well, give you a little bit of a take on what I see is going on. Speaking of take, it's time to not take, but to give the fill in the blank for this episode. And I pretty much answered the question that has the blank for this episode. What is one of my favorite times a year? Most people would say their birthday, Christmas, a holiday of some sort of description. But personally, especially the way that this week has gone for me, my favorite day is clearly daylight savings time because the amount of rest that was required by me this week, whew, my goodness, I needed every single second of that extra hour of sleep that I got. Would not be able to function properly if I didn't get it. Unfortunately, I did. So the question for the fill in the blank would be, what's one of your favorite days? And the answer is clearly daylight savings time to get that extra hour. I love it. Now it's time to ring the bell and go into the main event. Time for me to tell you what I've observed. Observation episode number 3. Here it comes. The bell has rung, and I'm going to start with, well, why I'm so tired. A nice little segue. At least it seems like it would be for me. Typically, I'm a kind of person who just likes to have things in a fairly structured order, kind of know what's going on. But I'm able to improvise when the time comes. I'm okay with that. I can live with it. Something happens, you just sort of adjust. But then there are certain things that are out of your control, and even trying to adjust just becomes difficult. Wasn't too long ago, within the last week and a half or so, my mother, who was on dialysis, had a slight infection in her line that she uses for dialysis. They told her that she would have to go and have it looked at and perhaps replaced. Usually, the process isn't that difficult, and it doesn't take very long. And a lot of times, they can do it in a surgical center. When she was living in New Jersey, as opposed to when she was living with me, they usually got it done the day before she had to go back to dialysis, or even she would go after dialysis and have it done. And it was usually no big deal, not an issue whatsoever. She'd go, she'd get it done, she'd be over with, and life would move on. If there was some sort of um, infection, they would treat it with antibiotics, and then they would do the procedure, and there would still be no issue. Turns out that did not happen here. They say it's always sunny in Philadelphia, but on this day, a little cloudy. Just going to say that. She was set to go and have the procedure in order to check the line out. I dropped her off. They said it was going to take about an hour for the procedure, so I was going to go grab something to eat and then come back in a little while. Turns out I left the parking lot and literally made a left turn to go down the road in order to get something to eat, and I got a phone call from the center that said, well, it looks like it's still slightly infected. We are only a surgical center, and in case of some sort of emergency, we wouldn't be able to handle the situation. It would be a better idea if you went to a hospital emergency room and had them look at it, and they would be able to make the adjustments. And I was like, all right, we can work around that, I guess. And so at that point, we go to a hospital that will remain anonymous. I've already given them as bad a review as I possibly could on Google. You know me. You can actually find my profile. It's the lip, the whole thing. It's me. I've been I'm going to say, very successful with my Google reviews. I've gotten a lot of pictures, and those pictures have manifested over 3 million views total between my reviews and the pictures and videos I've done. So there's certainly something to my reviews. You should be able to find it fairly easy, and then you'll know the hospital if you're interested in finding out which one it is. But to say that, the procedure was scheduled originally for, I believe it was 10 o'clock, and I picked my mother back up at around 10:30. At that point, we proceeded to the hospital in question, arrived around 11:15, checked in, and then, as horrible a situation would be, we waited and waited and waited and waited. Turns out that they came by and checked vitals on her and everybody else who was around while we were just in the waiting room. to see an actual physician to have it looked at. And of course, we were not the first who were there. There was a bunch of people who were there before we got there. But we waited and waited and waited and waited and asked the nurses who were around, do you know what time we're going to be able to get in? Their answer was usually the same. We really don't know. You just got to kind of wait. And so we continued to wait and continued to wait and continued to wait until the clock started to really become a very interesting factor. Now, you have to consider for this procedure that my mother was supposed to have at 10:30, they told her that she shouldn't eat after midnight, so she finished her dinner the night before around 7 o'clock and hadn't eaten. And when we arrived at this hospital, it was 11:15 already, so it had already been quite some time, more than 12 hours at that point. It continued to move on to the point where we kept checking in and out to see if there was any option that she would be able to go. And now it's after 7 p.m. So now it has been 24 full hours that she has not eaten, waiting for this procedure. And in that time period, we never got to go and see the physician. And this is 12 hours. Then we continued until the point where I was becoming curious that it ended up being 1:15 a.m. At that point, people who had already been there had mostly gone. Only a handful of the people who were there before us had actually went into the back and were seen by a physician. A majority of them actually went home. And then a few people who were after us were still waiting. Now, the amount of time that we spent in the ER was 14 hours. 14 hours. And we did not get to see, or I should say, my mother did not get to see the physician. So we're going to have to play this game again. Um, as I record, like I said, it's November 3rd. We're going to try again on either the 4th or the 5th to do this procedure and have it done. What is the observation that I have? That's what the show is all about. I'm under the impression that just maybe the hospital waiting room is some sort of sick endurance game show that they're trying to see how long that people will tolerate waiting for service. It's the only reason why I can imagine we sat there for 14 hours. Think about it. If you were at work, an 8-hour day is a normal day. 16 hours would be doing a double. But at least you're moving, you're active most of the time. Consider this. We were sitting in a horribly uncomfortable waiting room for what would nearly be a double shift for a normal worker. That's a long, long, long time. And again, like I said, my mother wasn't able to eat because the procedure was required to be done on an empty stomach, and it had been so long that they actually said, oh, maybe you should go get something to eat. And of course, through this 14-hour period of time, I ran back and forth to my car in order to recharge my phone. And then after a while, we did then go. I then went and picked up some food. I think it was like 8 o'clock. And then still waited until 1:15 before we finally said enough of this and left. So the procedure had not been done. And they wore us out. We couldn't hold on any longer than 14 hours in that uncomfortable seat for that long. They won. We didn't have the endurance to do it. And like I said, my observation here would be that maybe the ER is trying to test us to see if we would have the ability and endurance to last until they finally decided to take us. On that one, well, they kind of beat us there. They win. Another observation that this individual who's speaking to you, notice. You go to Walmart here in Philadelphia and in some other cities around here, and other stores in general, And what you find is an amazing situation. I find when I go into a store, there's merchandise, and you're able to browse and see if it's something that you're interested in, or maybe it's even the target that you came there for, and you go and you pick up the item and then you leave, pay for it, no problems. Turns out that some very simple products, simple. Now, I understand electronics. It's usually your more expensive stuff, right? I get that. I can see cough medicine, especially since people have been trying to use it, some types for drug manufacturing. I understand it. And there's other items of decent value that are floating around that are in specific sections. I understand putting those items under lock and key and having to request to get those items. Now, when it comes to something simple like lotion, soap, and having it walled off in a section all to itself, and the only way you can get that item is to speak to a cashier who is working in that area to use the key in order to unlock the case that holds the lotion or the soap, and then bring it up to the register in that section where you would then have to pay for that item in only that section. You can't take that item out of that section without having paid for it. Yeah, you can't walk it up to the front where you used to be able to do it. You had a bar of soap or a bottle of lotion, go up to the front register, see the cashier, or nowadays the self checkout, scan it, pay for it, and leave. No. The item in question must be paid for in that very section. Heck, I bought some new gizmos for the podcast in the electronics section of Walmart, walked right up to the front and paid for them. Didn't have to pay for them in the electronics section. Now, certainly, there have been times when I would be looking to buy something from the electronics section and had a few other items, and they rang those items up, made it convenient. I could just leave. I bought everything right there in the electronics section, and life was good. But it seems like this is the anti Wawa now with Walmart. They are not trying to be convenient in any way with stuff like this soap. They put it under lock and key, and you can only purchase it in the section where the soap is at. There is no option. Now, this particular time was going in there to get lotion and soap, and I had some other stuff in the cart, probably 20 things. And I was like, all right, this is what I need. I need this, but I have all this other stuff. I told them. They said, now you have to pay for the lotion and the soap here. But then I asked her, can I then have you bring up everything else that I have here? And they said, you got more than 15 items. I really can't do that. So the cashier proceeded to tell me what you could do is take the stuff that's in the cart, go up to the front registers, pay for those items, and then come back and pay for the soap. Let me get this straight. You want me to take my 20 items that I've got in the cart, minus the soap and the lotion that I want, go all the way up to the front of the store, pay for those items, make the decision to either take the stuff that I've just paid for out to my car, then come back into the store and purchase the soap and the lotion from this specific section. Or I could make the decision to pay for my items, carry my receipt in my hand, go back to the section that I went that has the soap and the lotion, pay for those items, and then leave. So Either way, what you're asking me to do is to go to two different cashiers with two different sets of items in the same store and have to walk back out. No, it's simply not going to happen. I have a theory that if you lock things up behind the case, you must not want me to buy them. End of story. If you locked it up, you must not want me to buy them. And that's the philosophy that I go with as far as that. That's my observation. Clearly, they must be saving these items for somebody else. And they are ready to pick this stuff up. But because they have it behind lock and key, they don't even want me to consider buying it because I can't look at it. I can't see if there's anything wrong with it until it's out of the case. And usually they take it all the way up there and then they scan it, and I wouldn't be able to even inspect it until I've already paid for it. Apparently, like I said, my only observation can be that they don't want me to have that item. That's why they locked it up. And I'm okay with that because at my house, I have my office where I'm recording right now. It is behind my door outside the house, and the door is locked unless I'm here. Also, in order to get to my office, you have to go through the fence. The gate is locked. So, in order for somebody to come into my office, they would have to be with me with my key so that I could open up the gate and then open up my office because I don't necessarily want you in my office unless I'm there. So I can understand how if you lock up items, you don't want people to mess with them. So simple observation. They don't want me to have lotion or soap at this particular Walmart. That's fine. And I simply will not buy it from them. Very easy observation to make because it is what it is, and I'm just going to live with it. I'll just buy my soap and lotion somewhere else. At least they were kind enough to let me know in advance that they didn't want to sell it to me. And I'm okay with it. Now comes another one of my favorite things. I've always been a GMC Chevy truck guy. I might have mentioned it before. On the inside door of my office, I actually have a bow tie from a Chevy vehicle that is fixed to the inside of my door. I love Chevys. I love the bow tie. And my favorite vehicles of all time that I personally own were my 87 Luxury Sport Monte Carlo, my Z28, 85 Z28 Camaro, and my '03 Avalanche. Love that Avalanche. Now, on the subject of what my observation is, it is on a vehicle that I am well aware of its capabilities from top to bottom, inside and out. I really need to set this one up because in order to really appreciate the picture of my observation, you gotta really understand where I'm coming from. Now, I'm gonna try to not make it overly technical. I'm gonna just be as straightforward with it as I can. If you've never had or been around an avalanche, there's some things that you need to know in order to really understand what I'm talking about. First of all, the avalanche typically is a pickup slash SUV that was created by General Motors for the Chevy brand in the late 80s, and it ran until about, I can't remember if it's 2007 or 8. It had a very short run. It wasn't a whole long time that they produced Avalanches. And I always found them very interesting because of that fact that they had all the capabilities you would want in a full size Silverado, but it also was capable of driving a whole lot of people around, sort of like a Tahoe or a Suburban. And it didn't give off the vibe of one or the other. It was really a mix between the two. Of course, the General Motors Company is good for taking a vehicle that is amazing and they'll share it between their other brands. For example, the old school people should know about this one. When they originally had the Camaro, they also had the Firebird Trans Am, which was a Pontiac. And that vehicle was literally the same. They just had different tags on it. Pontiac symbol versus the Chevy symbol. It's really all it was. Just a difference in the brand. Now, they did the same thing with the Avalanche. They created another version of the Avalanche, and for some weird reason, they chose to make that other version a Cadillac. So you could get the same vehicle, but it was in the Cadillac form, which is really weird because if you were asking me about a versatile SUV sort of truck that you're going to fill up with all kinds of anything, I don't know, carry a couch in it or washing machine. The first vehicle that I would think of is, yeah, I could see a General Motors truck or a Chevy truck doing that. The last vehicle in the General Motors line that I could see somebody carrying a whole bunch of 2x4s in would be a Cadillac. It just, for some reason, doesn't make any sense. I don't necessarily envision somebody holding, I don't know, 500 pounds of cinder blocks in the back of a Cadillac. It doesn't seem like it registers to me. But that's what they made it. Who am I to say that they picked the wrong choice? I think they should have made it the General Motors vehicle because, heck, I mean, they didn't make the Silverado or the Sierra a Cadillac. I mean, so why would you make an Avalanche a Cadillac? But that's another thing altogether, and 90% of the reason why they probably don't exist anymore. If you're listening, GM, bring back the Avalanche and put it in the General Motors line. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Let me continue with my observation here. Again, so that you understand more about the Avalanche, whereas you have your normal Silverado or Sierra has its normal truck bed, 6 or 8 foot, that you can put whatever you want. You can put wood, you can put cinder blocks. Like I said, you can carry a washer and dryer in the back of the thing. Not a big deal. And then, of course, the Tahoe has room and very much a lot of it, and it's really comfortable for people to sit in the back and in the front. It's really comfortable. Now you combine that short bed, maybe like 6 foot bed, with the comfort of sitting in the back of a Tahoe, and you've got yourself an Avalanche. And the beautiful part about it is, in order for the Avalanche to totally be maximized in truck mode, you can do a few things that will allow the Avalanche to carry nearly an entire payload like a Silverado. And it's such a beautiful thing, and that's why I miss my Avalanche, and I would love to get another one. Because what you do is, in the back of the Avalanche, there is a set of leaves that covers the bed. If you're carrying, like I said, the washing machine, you could take all 3 leaves out, and you could then have the bed wide open, and you could just put something as tall as a washing machine in there, and you don't have any problems. Or if you're carrying, let's say, drywall, you could leave the leaves in if you so desired, and you could just open up the tailgate of the Avalanche, and you could slide um, I don't know, 7, 8 pieces of drywall in the back, as is. But if you're carrying, say, more, what you could do is then remove the back window of the Avalanche, and there's a bar that goes across where the back seat is. What you would do is you'd lower the back seat, pull that bar out, take out the window, and you could probably carry, I don't know, from the bottom of the bed all the way up to what was the window. You could completely fill that with drywall or wood or whatever. It has all that kind of space, and you would be able to access from the back of the tailgate all the way up to the driver and passenger seat in the front. You would have that much room. You would be able to, at full capacity, carry whatever you wanted, and it would be all inclusive inside the Avalanche, just as if you put it in the bed of a Silverado. Only, I think it will be more secure because you actually have the roof of the Avalanche, which would be essentially the highest point that you could pile your stuff, and to the lowest point at the bottom of the bed. You could put a lot of stuff in there, and trust and believe, I never had that much stuff, but I did carry a washing machine, I did carry a stove in my Avalanche, and I had occasion to actually take some drywall in my Avalanche. I think it was maybe 10, 12 pieces. It wasn't so much that I had to move the bar or take out the window. I had enough space. All I had to do was drop the seats, and I could slide that stuff in there. No problems. Now, to my observation, what I witnessed on Roosevelt Boulevard maybe a month ago was something that made me really, really rethink the life of the Avalanche slash Cadillac version, which, of course, to me is ridiculous. Again, that you would actually haul anything inside of a Cadillac, just weird. But if you insisted and you had the Avalanche version of the Cadillac, which is simply called, of all stupid things, an Escalade. Yeah, they call it an Escalade, just like the regular Cadillac Escalade SUV. They call it the same thing. It's the dumbest thing in the world. Of course, I personally give it a nickname. I call it an Escalanche because it has the flair and elegance of your Escalade, but it's got the rugged toughness of the Avalanche. And it is an Avalanche with the different badges for Cadillac. Stupidest thing. I'm still not over that. Sorry. But what I saw on Roosevelt Boulevard was an individual who had such a vehicle as an Escalade version of the Avalanche, and they were coming from Home Depot. Now, I've already explained that the thing has a tailgate and you could slide stuff in the back. You also could remove a bar, which could then be behind the back seat, which would you then lower the back seat, and you could pull the back window out. There is a slot in the back of the back seat that you can put the glass from the back window in and secure it safely. You can slide anything you want in there. I believe I've gone over that and tried my best not to turn into the Red Hulk with the stupidity of this guy. Instead, he decided to take what appeared to be drywall, some sort of lumber, maybe even plywood, I don't know what it was, doesn't matter, and he bungee corded it on the back of the Avalanche's bed, on top of the leaves, which close off the bed. Even at 40 miles an hour with the bungee cords looking all raggedy, it ain't gonna hold when you could easily have solved your problem by just putting it inside the bed and behind the tail. So, needless to say, this fool was driving down, and of course, the bungee snapped, and the plywood slash drywall that he had sitting on top of the leaves naturally fell off of the Escalante. Needless to say, it went all over the Roosevelt Boulevard section that I was driving in, and I was able to fortunately avoid it. But of course, this guy paid however much money for that material, and it wasn't like he could just pick it up and put it back inside like the right way. Because when it hit the street, of course, it broke. It snapped. Must have been drywall. That's what my initial thought was because you could see the pieces all over the place. But at the same time, as fast as he was going, if it was particle board or plywood, it would have broken just as easily. So it could have been either one. So, however much money the guy paid for the material, he just lost it. And it was all over the ground. So for him to pick it up isn't going to do him any good because even if he does, it's still damaged and they're not taking that stuff back, especially the way that he piled it in the truck. So my observation, of course, I'm getting there a long way, but my observation to this situation is this guy had no idea of the capabilities of what an avalanche could do. None whatsoever. And and he paid the extra money to have the Cadillac symbol put on the avalanche, which means he overpaid for the vehicle and he didn't know what it could do. So he was probably perfectly fine with the destruction of the material that he had because he already overpaid for a vehicle. He didn't have to. And he didn't know what he was driving even when he had it. So he wasted both time and money. And fortunately for him, there was nobody directly behind him when that material fell because if had there been, I imagine he would have an insurance claim that he would have to pay out because he would have done some serious damage to somebody else's car. And all that would have easily been prevented if he just knew the capabilities of the vehicle he was driving. And my theory, like I said, my only observation is the guy had no idea what he was driving. None. Now, somebody might say, well, maybe the bed was full of stuff too. Okay, let's say the bed was full of stuff, right? Let's say it was all the way up to the leaf from the tailgate and it literally scraped the very top of the leaf. This is why this person is still stupid. Because if the tailgate was completely full, and this goes back to the point where he doesn't know what he's driving or how to drive it or what he's doing, that's when you take the leaves out of the vehicle. It was just him. He could have put those leaves, if he really wanted to, in the front seat next to him in the passenger side. I've done it before in my Avalanche. They fit, there's no issues, no problem. Then he could have taken out that bar that's across the back seat, pulled out the window, secured the window behind the back seat, lowered the back seat, and you have all the space between the top of the tailgate and the roof of the Avalanche. At this point, there are little hooks on the inside of the tailgate that I didn't mention. Not the tailgate, inside the Avalanche's bed, that you could have secured your load and it would have fit all the way up to the top of the roof, and he still would not have had that issue because he just didn't know what he was doing with the vehicle, and it was a hurt piece to me. I'm sorry, it really was, and it drove me insane to think about it. I truly believe that guy did not know what the capabilities of his vehicle was, and even if he borrowed it from somebody, which to me would even be dumber because, again, I go back to my point. Why would you load a Cadillac up with building material? I don't get it. Why would you buy that for that purpose? It doesn't make any sense. But now that I've come back to reality, I can certainly say that I stand by my observation. He simply didn't understand the vehicle. What are you going to do? Now, for a cool observation that I made, I don't know, at this point in time, 8, 9 years ago, I may have mentioned it before, but it's so cool. I have to use the Jeff Goldblum line from Independence Day when he was talking about the hidden signal that the aliens were using inside of our satellites to communicate. The eventing of my observation here is so subtle that it's probably been mostly overlooked by a lot of people. In fact, a few weeks ago on a Wednesday night Bible study, for some reason it crossed my mind again, and the Bible study was online through Facebook with Faith Fellowship Baptist Church, and they were going over Genesis, and they were talking about. They actually read the first verse, and it just dawned on me again. It's like, oh, you know what? I don't think I've told this group of individuals. I don't believe that Pastor Edlow has heard me say this. So in the chat, I typed what was my observation that I found out, the epiphany that came to me, like I said, about 8 years ago. And it's really, I think it's one of the coolest things in the Bible, period. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great stuff, obviously, in it. But this is what makes this epiphany so really neat. You got to consider the fact that each book in the Bible was written by certain people. And a lot of these people, most of them, never interacted with each other ever. In fact, some of them had hundreds of years between them. But this is what makes this observation so cool. The simple fact that I would say this all the time, and I'm going to break it down in such a way that it's going to be even a little bit technical, but it's cool at the same time. For those of you who do not know, the first book in the Bible is Genesis, and the last book in the Bible is Revelations. There was a time when I would say the coolest thing in the world is like, yeah, whatever you're looking for is between in and amen. Because in is the very first word in the Bible, in the English translation that we have, the King James Version, and most others. In is the very first word. And amen is the very last word in Revelation. The last word is amen. Now, this is my observation that is very, very, very cool, I think. The fact that Christians believe that it is the true word. There's no doubt about it, right? Other people may not be Christians or not, but they do recognize it as a holy book. And they believe that there are some people out there who think that there is some good stuff inside of it. Let me tell you, this hit me almost like a frying pan in the forehead when I heard this in my mind. Remember, the first word in the Bible is in. The last word in the Bible is amen. Let's break that down even further. The first letter in the Bible is I. The last letter in the Bible is N, because in is spelled I-N, and amen is spelled A-M-E-N. So the first letter is I. The last letter is N, which means everything else, all the good words, all the good deeds that people did, all the spiritual guidance that can be gained inside the Bible is literally encapsulated inside the word in. In other words, everything you may need to know is literally, not figuratively, but literally inside the word in. Every single thing. All the good stuff that the Bible has to offer is literally inside the word in. From the beginning to the end. I-N. Everything else is inside of it. 8 years ago, my mind was blown when I thought of it. And in fact, Pastor Ed Lowe of Faith Fellowship Baptist Church and the panel, they got a kind of kick out of that too. Because it's something that most people, it's just a little thing, but nobody really thinks of it. It's just kind of subtle and it's neat. But every good part of the Bible is in the word in. All of it. Every word. I in the beginning and at the end. Everything is inside the Bible that you need to know. It's just, are you kidding me? I couldn't believe it. That's like a weird and interesting observation. And clearly the translations of the people who translated the Bible were just busy trying to make sure they got all the words in they were trying to get, and not necessarily focusing on the fact that the first letter was I and the last letter was N. They probably didn't have that on their radar either, which is even funnier. But the fact that I was able to notice that just makes me go, whoa. And when I was walking through the jail and I saw Christian inmates who were talking about stuff, and I would engage in conversation with them, I would mention that. And it would be one of my favorite things to see their eyes sort of go like, are you, wait, what? Really? Yeah. It's just neat. It really is. Overwhelmingly satisfying to see that. But on that note, I'm going to ring the bell and end the main event. I think that my observations were clear and I was able to present them in a way that was functional and fun. But now it's time for the Spear of the Week, because I know a few weeks ago I almost missed it. I almost completely forgot about it. One of my favorite segments, almost totally on this football Sunday that I'm actually recording the episode, dropped the ball. Well, I told you just how much I enjoy the fact that we are in a situation where we've got to fall back in time because of the daylight savings time. To me, the Spear of the Week would be the fact that there's going to come a time in spring that we're going to spring ahead. Yeah, we're going to get more daylight, but boy, that day that it happens, that overnight period in the morning, when you lose that hour, oh, it's awful. It's just unbearable. Yeah, it's one day, but that one day, for me, usually takes a couple, maybe three, for me to really adjust to the fact that that hour is no longer there. So, my initial thought process would be, yeah, I know, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who came up with the idea, but that was back then. We don't necessarily need it as much. That's a story for another time. But I certainly would think that the spring forward portion of daylight savings clearly should be the victim of the Spear of the Week. All right. Now, as I record this, I'm probably a little bit slightly ahead of myself. Only so slightly. But I do have my picks for week 9. And when you hear this, it's going to be week 10 coming up. And I'm debating on whether or not I should go ahead and give you my picks for week 9. Yeah, I think I'll do that. I'll give you my picks for week 9. And then the next recording I do, I will tell you how I did, and I'll give you the recordings for week 10. Hopefully, I can get this done this week and essentially stockpile another episode, and then I'll be able to focus on week 10 and tell you what I did there. So far, the record's looking pretty good. Overall, after 8 weeks of the season, I'm 25-15. I got 25 games right, only got 15 wrong. Now, I didn't officially count this first game, even though it is over, and I'm going to make it official when I tell you the scores of all the others, but I will say this. It did not go well for me. But I didn't add it into my record yet. And I'm not going to tell you what the official score was until I'm done with the others. But the game was the Thursday night game, so it already happened. I just didn't put the score down because, like I said, I'm going to do it with all the other ones. It was the Houston Texans versus the New York Jets, and I picked the Texans. For those of you who already know the score, I picked the Texans 30-10 over the Jets. That one didn't go well. Now, the other games for week 9 that I picked, which as I'm recording have not happened, they're about to happen, probably the next hour or so. I have the Chargers versus the Browns, and I'm going Browns. Just because this could be a sloppy, ugly, nasty game in Cleveland with two teams that have a running mindset now that Jim Harbaugh is in San Diego. Well, not San Diego, in Los Angeles, the Chargers. I see the Browns eking out a win 17-14. An interesting one, the Broncos versus the Ravens. I think the Ravens are better than the Broncos, but I don't think they're that much better. I think the Broncos are a team that is on the rise right now. Got some young pieces and some good pieces, but I just don't know if they're going to have enough to get past the Ravens. I see the Ravens 24, Browns 20. Now, my man in Washington, Jalen Daniels, he's got the Giants this week. And trust and believe, I think the Commanders are the best team in the NFC East. Period. End of story. So I expect them to step on the Giants' throat 28-13. And since the 49ers are off this week, I picked another game. Not necessarily the best game, but Patriots and the Titans. I think it'll be close because both teams aren't very good. But I think the Patriots are going to be a little bit better than the Titans. I see it 20-17 Patriots. That's what I'm looking at for week 9. And hopefully those games are as good as they were last week. Boy, man, oh man, oh man. All I have to say is week 8, Jaden Daniels. Yeah, especially since the 49ers are off. I hope I can catch that one. I really do. But now it's time for the show to come to an end. As they say, all good things come to an end, and hopefully you think that this is a good thing, and it is now about to end. Little tears for everybody, right? It's not good, it's sad. Going to start off by talking to you about the background painting this week. This painting is a very interesting painting, and it's got a very interesting name. I think it's probably one of my favorite ones, and the name is what's a little bit off. People might find a little bit of concern with it, but consider this. The background picture today, painting, is a normal one of one by me, and it is one of one in a series. Yes, I created a series. This is one of my very first series that I created, and I call it the Shape series. And this is the first one. This one is called Death Triangle. Now, why do I call it Death Triangle? Well, my favorite, one, if not my absolute favorite series of video games for Xbox has always been Hitman. I love it. My favorite game. And in order to create the triangles that I used for this painting, I used my copy of Hitman Absolution. and I used the actual box of the game, Hitman Absolution rather, to create each of these triangles. I used the box in order to make those triangles. Thus, Hitman, thus, Death Triangle. That's the reason for that name. And this will eventually be part of the series, which will be for sale. And I'm going to say, happy, happy, joy, joy. Exciting news. As this episode is being released, I actually have a couple of my pieces that are actually on sale on eBay, even as we speak. I've placed Corner of Color and one other. Of course, I came to this a little bit ill prepared because I forgot the name of my own painting. How stupid is that? But it is on eBay. Look for Phil Henderson and look for abstract art, and you will find Corner of Color, and you will find that's what it was. It's called Something Different. Corner of Color and Something Different are on eBay for sale by me, and eventually some of these others will be on there as well. Probably by the time that this show airs, I may have a third painting for sale on eBay. Um, I can't wait. I'm loving it. But also at the same time, I must let you know that I hope that you are listening to this on YouTube and have found it that it was good enough to subscribe to my channel at Phil the Lip. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Facebook, join us. The Facebook Lip group, join us. There's always room for one more. Every single time. Always room. Finally, I also need you to check out the Instagram page. Of course, that's going to be Philip Henderson 5102. Gotta have that. Gotta check that out as well. I always say it. I'm out there on X somewhere. Find it. You'll be able to get to it. Don't just listen to the show. Like I said, I have other videos out there. In fact, I did one fairly recently as this is being recorded about the McDonald's ice cream machine when I went to the drive-through a couple days ago. It's kind of interesting, I think. I like it. It's amazing. But of course, it is now one of my favorite times, and that is it's time for the words of wisdom. Let's see what we got for you today. I may have already used these words of wisdom, and I've got a lot of them. Well over 180 probably, just a quick guess. I know this show is episode 181, I believe, but I have plenty of them that I haven't used. But this set of words of wisdom is actually one of the ones that I used before. Did I use it before? I may have. But it makes sense for this episode. And it goes back to the epiphany that I had. The words of wisdom are the first letter in the Bible is I. The last letter in the Bible is N. Therefore, everything you need to know is in the Bible. Every other word that was written is in the Bible that you need to know. Simple epiphany, simple words of wisdom. And on that note, my name is Phil, and you've just listened to The Lip.